The objective of the tile press job is to press clay to make tiles. The equipment used includes a cart, a reclaim barrel, which is a 55-gallon drum on wheels, a ram press, an arbor press, and a pug mill, which is used 3 times per day. The tools used include a mallet, a knife, a clay slicer, a wire cutter, a tool for the hanger, a stamp, and a mold. The materials used include reclaimed clay, a loaf of which weighs about 21 pounds, a tray so tiles can dry evenly, and a board. The work environment is an inside work environment with heat and no air conditioning. The personal protective equipment includes floor mats. The workers observed were 5 feet 10 inches tall and 5 feet 6 inches tall. There are 3 types of tile pressing tasks: reclaim clay, which was not observed, prep clay, and press tile with the ram press, or hand press with the arbor press or mallet technique. The work tasks for prepping clay include: first, position the 55-gallon drum near the pug mill. Next, workers will get a handful of clay. Workers then position the clay in the pug mill. Next, workers will repeat these 2 steps. Next, they pick up the loaf and then carry the loaf to the work table. Workers next cut the clay into tiles using the clay slicer. Finally, workers position the clay tiles on the cart. Pressing clay using the ram press involves 2 workers. First, workers position the tray in the press. Next, workers will get a sliced loaf of clay. They then position the sliced loaf of clay on the ram press staging area. Workers then get the slice of clay and fold the clay piece. Workers break the slice of clay in half and position the clay piece in the press in groups of 9 pieces per tray. Workers then activate the press. Once the tiles are pressed, workers remove the tray with the pressed tile from the press. Once removed, the tray is positioned in the drying/staging area. Workers then get a pressed tile and remove excess clay from it. Excess clay is thrown in the 55-gallon barrel. Workers position the pressed tile on the wire tray. Finally, workers position the wire tray on the rack. The work tasks for the hand pressing clay include: workers first prepare clay by pounding clay with a mallet. Next, they will smooth the tile face using a knife. Next, they position a mold on the clay to determine the size. Then workers will trim all 4 sides of the clay using the knife. Next, they will get the trimmed piece of clay and position the clay in the mold. Workers then pound the clay into the mold. They then push the clay into the mold using their thumb around the mold perimeter. Workers then use their fingers to press the clay into the mold. Next, they fold up all 4 edges of the clay into the mold. Workers next use the wire cutter to remove the excess clay. Then workers smooth clay using the knife. Workers then add the hanger area by pressing the hanger mold into the clay. Then they use the wire cutter to remove excess clay in the hanger area. Workers then smooth the clay using the knife. Next, workers get 2 stamps. They press each stamp into the clay. And finally, workers discard excess clay. There were several ergonomic risk factors observed for the tile press job. Repeated and sustained exertions were rated as a medium pace. Hands were in steady motion or exertion to press tiles. Sustained exertions were observed and included continuous standing, continuous neck flexion while removing excess clay from the tiles and during the hand press process. Forceful exertions were required to push the 55-gallon drum, to push or press clay into the pug mill, to break slices of clay, to transfer trays of tiles, to lift, carry, and position a loaf of clay, and to hand press clay using the mallet, thumb, and fingers. Awkward postures were observed in all 3 jobs, and for the prep clay job they included torso flexion, or forward bending, and torso-lateral bending, or sideways bending, and extended arms to get clay from the 55-gallon drum. Wrist extension, or backwards bending, to push clay into the pug mill. Torso flexion to cut the clay loaves and to pick up clay loaves. Neck flexion and wrist extension to slice loaves and to position the sliced loaves on the cart. For the press clay using the ram press job, the awkward postures observed included elevated and extended arms to position the clay in the press, to position the tray in the press, and to remove the tray from the press. Wrist flexion and forearm pronation to break clay into pieces. Extended reach and torso flexion to get the pressed tiles from the tray. And neck flexion while removing excess clay from a tile. For the hand press clay job, the awkward postures observed included neck flexion, elevated arms, and wrist deviation or sideways bending while pounding the clay with the mallet. Neck flexion, forearm rotation, and wrist extension while positioning the clay in the mold with the thumb and fingers, while smoothing the clay with the knife, and while cutting the clay with the knife. The mechanical or localized contact stress observed was contact stress between the forearms, hands, and fingers and the edges of the tools and equipment. The recommendations for the tile press job include: for prepping clay, consider using an adjustable height cart to reduce posture stress. Investigate positioning the 55-gallon drum on a lift/tilt stand and/or using a smaller drum to decrease posture stress. Investigate drums with a mechanical bottom, or a self-elevating bottom, that will push the clay up to the top of the drum to decrease posture stress. Investigate mechanical modifications to the pug mill that will elevate the clay loaf exit to reduce posture stress. Investigate tools for picking up clay from the 55-gallon drum and for pushing clay into the pug mill to decrease forceful exertions. Consider modifying the work methods to remind workers that they do not need to press or push the clay into the pug mill to decrease forceful exertions and awkward postures. Consider using a cart instead of the 55-gallon drum for the reclaimed clay to reduce awkward postures and forceful exertions. For pressing clay using the ram press, the recommendations include: consider using an adjustable height platform for the worker to decrease posture stress. Investigate lowering the press load point to decrease posture stress. Consider slicing the loaf instead of using hands to break the tile to decrease forceful exertions and awkward postures. For hand pressing clay, the recommendations include: investigate new hand and/or power tools that can be used to position the clay in the mold to decrease forceful exertions and posture stress. Investigate using a large arbor press and/or an arbor press with multiple press points to position clay in the mold to decrease posture stress and forceful exertions.